get together. We'll talk about, what you're feeling, what's going on, and have the kids there, have kids able. This is a forum, as far as I'm concerned, where I, in all honesty, would rather hear more from the kids than the parents, as I hear from you guys a lot. Not that I want to, I love hearing from all, but I'd like to really hear the kids' perspective on this and what homeschooling means for them, why they're homeschooled, if they left the schools, if they've always been homeschooled, and what does this proposed change mean to them in their lives. And we put out this form, and I've had some people here who I think are kind of like the pioneers in homeschooling here in Connecticut. We've got Representative Dauphinais and Representative Zupkus, and then of course we've got Senator Jeff Gordon, who is your senator here, and Representative Tim Ackert, who's also part of Tolland. So the forum tonight is for us to really listen to you. We're going to talk about, like I said, the OCA thing, but to listen to you because I need to know what I need to fight for when I go to Hartford. My job is to bring your voice to Hartford, and I need to hear from you. I need to understand what this means to you and how you want to fight this battle. So that's the purpose of tonight. And with that, I'm going to just put the mic down to Tim and start going over that way. Everybody do a quick introduction, what their role is in all of this, and just welcome you guys all here to Tolland.
Thank you, Tammy, and first of all, thank you all for being here tonight, and look forward to listening to your perspective on what we need to do as a state legislature to make sure that what you're doing with your children stays intact for what we're doing, because you're champions. All I have to say to you, all of you that take the time, that care so much about your children's education, that you do different shifts at work, or somebody stays home, whatever it may be. So we're going to listen to your input on this. And for me, myself, I have a daughter that's an educator. And, when we talk about this, she goes, they're champions. She says it herself. I have a person that's a teacher. She talks about how she had thought about it and said that, how it worked out. She says that, Dad, I can't wait to hear what you give me for feedback as an educator for how they're doing it and how they're managing it. So tonight's your night, and I'll leave my remarks. I know we have something else that we have to talk about later, but I'll leave the remarks of that and look forward to this evening. I want to thank you all for taking the time to be here, and again, for what you do for your children. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Representative Dauphinais. I represent the 44th District, which is Sterling, Killingly, and Plainfield. And I couldn't be happier to be here to help represent all of you. I think I know many, many faces in this room. And I know Rep. Nuccio said she saw thousands the other day, and I've experienced that because much crossover with parental rights regarding how we medicate our children and those choices that every single family should be able to make on their own. You all know I stand with you, and we're here to hear from you. Happy to be here, and I'll pass it along so we can get moving.
I felt like I have to stand up a little bit. Hi, everybody. I'm Leslie Zupkus. I represent Prospect, Bethany, part of Cheshire, and part of Waterbury. So I'm on that part of the state. Thank you for having me in Tolland. It was a great drive here. But I am the ranking member on education. I've been around not as long as some here, longer than others. So I was also the ranking on children's, where there was a case, Matthew Tirado, happened. So I'm very familiar with that case. I represent Waterbury, where the Waterbury happened. I'm pretty familiar with what happened there. I represent Cheshire, where there was a young girl in school that committed suicide. So in my district, I've had these incidents unfortunately happen. It has nothing to do with homeschooling. So we hear you. I can't wait to hear more from you tonight. I'm a huge parental rights. I think you need to raise your children and not legislators in Hartford or the government. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to hearing from y'all.
I'll stand up as well so everyone can hear me. So I'm State Senator Jeff Gordon, 35th District. I get to represent 13 towns. So I have Ackert, Chaplin, Coventry, Eastford, Ellington, part of Ellington, Hampton, Stafford, Tolland, which we're here tonight, part of Thompson, Union, Vernon, Wellington, and Woodstock. And I can tell you that in our part of the state, especially Northeast Connecticut, there are a lot of parents who homeschool and a lot of kids who are homeschooled. So during my time as a senator, and even when I was a town official in Woodstock for 15 years, I heard from a lot of parents. And it's great to see you all here and the kids who are here. So thank you for coming here. We've heard that this is a listening session, and indeed it is. You don't need to listen to us talk. There's a lot of opportunities if you want at some other point, but we really want to hear from you, hear your perspective, hear your concerns. I know I've been hearing from a lot of my constituents about that. As you know, there was a great big rally filled up the Capitol. A lot of kids were there. It was great to see, especially folks with their kids who came to let their voice be heard, and your voice was heard. So don't underestimate telling us and telling others at the Capitol what you think, what you want, and what you don't want, because it does make a difference. In that rally with all the kids, and many of you may have been there, people paid attention to that. People noticed, and it changed the direction. I think it changed the direction for good. I am a strong supporter of parental rights and individual rights. I spoke at the rally, and I strongly believe that nowhere in the Constitution does it say that government should or must go after law-abiding parents who want to exercise their parental right to educate their kids. I know a lot of people believe that as well. I look forward tonight to hearing from you and learning from you and joining my colleagues. So thank you for being here.
I'm like Leslie, I can't sit too long, too much time. Okay, so we're actually doing good on time right now, since you have no idea how much the good thing that is, because people up here talk far too much, in my opinion. But we're ahead of schedule here. So I wanted to just up by a show of hands, has anybody in here read the OCA report? Office of Child Advocate report that was put out for. Okay, so not a lot of people. All right. So the Office of Child Advocate did a review looking at homeschoolers and looking at the recent cases that have been in the news. I read this report, I looked at it, I read the recommendations. And the one thing that I found most common in here is they talk about 22.9% of kids who are homeschooled having some sort of DCF interaction. And then she goes on to talk about these cases, which are very egregious cases. Don't get me wrong, they're horrible cases. But the one thing that I think they all have in common is a very active DCF involvement. And if 22.9% of cases have at least one DCF call, that means that 77.1% do not, right? So I'm always afraid of over legislating and looking at certain cases that feed a narrative and then providing laws for everybody outside of that, which I don't always think is fair. So I'm not going to go through the whole report that she has here, but I do highly encourage you, if you are a homeschooling parent, to read it and understand the report that has been given to other levels of government. Children's, I think it's Children's and Education will have this also, the governor's office and everything else. But the key thing on here is she has 4 recommendations that she is putting forward for us to consider in the next legislative session. Or actually, to be honest with you, we're probably being considered in the last legislative session, but nobody's considering them openly and honestly. They were all taking place behind closed doors. And there was not input from everybody on these policies to understand it. So I think it's very important that going forward, we focus on the fact that this should be openly done with transparency, with the voices of everybody involved, so we can find the right balance that we need. So the first recommendation that the OCA has is to amend Connecticut General Statute 10-184 to describe how a parent must be able to show that the child is elsewhere receiving equivalent instruction in the studies taught in the public schools. Oh, by the way, I do want to say we did invite OCA here tonight. We invited the Office of Child Advocate to come, and they denied coming. They said they didn't want to come. They're going to meet with me at another time, at which point I will bring up any concerns you have tonight. But in the meantime, all right, that's all. I should put that up. OCA recommends that this include that the parent or child appear annually and provide enrollment documentation, that the child be independently evaluated annually for academic progress, and that the parent provide initial and periodic assurances that the child is in good health. For children receiving equivalent instruction in a private school, annual proof of enrollment in the private school should be sufficient. So this will also be effect for anybody who has children in private schools. Number 2 is OCA recommends that the annual evaluation requirement include, a list of options for independent evaluation of academic progress from which the parent may choose. This would allow the parent to select a form of evaluation that is most consistent with their choices regarding homeschooling and ensure that there are appropriate options for children with disabilities. Policymakers may look to New Hampshire and Maine for examples. Number 3 is a statutory requirement that districts, upon receipt of a notice of intent to homeschool, conduct an internal assessment to determine if the district previously made reports of suspected abuse and neglect based on the totality of the information known to the district to determine whether such notice gives rise to a reasonable suspicion that a child is abused or neglected and should be reported to DCF. On a side note on that, teachers are already mandated reporters, and I think anything that goes through DCF is a clear case of abuse and neglect. Don't equate abuse and neglect with homeschoolers, and I don't think we should be in this report in any of them. I think they are two totally different entities, two totally different issues, and we need to handle them, discuss them, and legislate for them as such. And number 4 is following amendment to the statute, DCF should review its accepted criteria and update the operational definition of educational neglect to ensure that it is consistent with updated law. DCF should provide guidance and training on what is required for homeschooling and how the caseworker should assess to determine whether a child is in fact being homeschooled. So those are her 4 recommendations to be considered for the next legislative session. I think we had get that. But I am going to turn this over now to Rep. Dauphinais. And if Rep. Zupkus wants to talk about, again, like her area and the cases that occurred there. But Representative Dauphinais has really been involved in the homeschool movement for a lot longer than me. I don't have the history that she does. And just kind of talk about these 4 recommendations and what changes that would mean and what the differences are to what we currently have and what you'd be expected for as a homeschool parent should these regulations pass.
Thank you, Nuccio. A couple things I failed to mention earlier was that I'm ranking on children's, and I too was part of the Matthew case, so I'm familiar with that. And at that time, many of you in this room know they were trying to push homeschool regulation then, and I believe that it's the same lineup of requests that they had then that they kind of resubmitted this time. We also know that all of us up here, and I think I can speak for all of us, don't want any child abused, and I think everybody in this room would agree with that. But I think we're going with these regulations and policies they're trying to put in are over intrusive and above and beyond that. We're really most interested in substantiated cases from DCF, not unsubstantiated cases. We also know that many homeschoolers are kind of targeted. If you decide to bring your child home to homeschool them, they're immediately make an assumption that there's an issue, and many reports are put out that are false and unverified and unsubstantiated. So we're really interested in maybe addressing those cases that are substantiated DCF cases. So we're interested in that. We're most interested, I think many of us up here, are the truancy and the absenteeism in public schools, which is a huge problem. So what's going on with those children and what's going on in the homes of those children? And so we're looking to go kind of in that direction. We think that these policies that what they want to implement are kind of funny, because what the homeschoolers want to do is stay away from the public school and not under the big heavy hand of government, right? And what these do is do just that, is they put you right there having to answer to them. And by the way, I have several family members that are homeschooled. My own grandchildren are homeschooled. So I'm a fierce advocate and want to hear from you. And I want to pass this on to Rep. Zupkus because we're both, I'm also on the education committee. So we're both kind of going back and forth with that because I know Rep. Zupkus has also been on the children's committee as well. So they kind of interrelate and cross over. So I'll let her take it from here.
Thank you. I'm not going to reiterate what Representative Dauphinais said because we agree, right? So we all kind of know where we're standing. What I would say is, as Representative was talking, the substantiated cases are the ones that really need to be looked at. So if there's a case that something happens and somebody wants to pull their child out of school and there's a substantiated DCF case, then that child should be followed. They should, because as we said, none of us want any child harmed. But there's a big difference in that and in what I believe some of the legislators want to do. The other thing I'll say is my big word this session has been accountability. And I have a lot of problems and issues with the Department of Education. And I've made those very well known throughout the session. So to me, the Department of Education is not even doing the job they need to be doing for our public schools. Kids are graduating that can't read. Scores are horrible for math and reading. So they need to focus on that right now and get their house in order before they start tackling homeschooling. So that's really, you know where we all stand. We're here for you. We have your back. I think the DCF, there's some things that could be done there legislatively, but that's it. And to us, two different issues. Homeschooling, leave homeschoolers alone, and let's look at the real problems. Because what I mentioned in Cheshire that happened was a kid in school. They were not even being homeschooled. Or pulled out. They were actually in school. So the school systems have enough issues as they are, so they should take care of those first. Thank you. Yeah. 3 minutes.
So we've heard a lot you may have heard a lot this legislative session about a lot of accountability, and very much so I'm a strong believer that we need to make certain that if state agencies are supposed to do what they're supposed to do, they really need to do it. And in cases where, quite frankly, trying to deflect away from their responsibility, we as legislators have that responsibility to move them back so we can find what the root problems are and not let agencies start blaming, for example, homeschoolers for something that's not their fault. That's a big issue. And as we've heard, accountability is extremely important, and it just seems to dominate more and more the legislative sessions. I can tell you from the Senate perspective, not a member of the House, but as the Senate perspective, a lot of also what there's been fights on is what is the role of government? And we hear a lot about regulation, and there is an appropriate place for regulation depending upon what topic you might want to pick. But very much so more and more in the Senate, there's been a big push by some to just regulate. Now that can be very expensive when you're talking about having to staff agencies, but you have to ask yourself, what is really being looked at and trying to accomplish? And what vexes me a lot, and I talk about this on the Senate floor at times, is if there's this push for regulation and giving the agencies more authority, more staff, and more money to do whatever the legislature deems it wants to add to the laws, we should be focused on the laws we already have and the policies and procedures that agencies already have. I don't know how many of you read the audit reports that come out. I actually do in my quote unquote free time in the middle of the night. It's amazing the number of agencies that fail some of the basic policies they're supposed to follow, and they're repeat offenders, yet there's nothing that tags them to be accountable. That is something a number of us are pushing to change. And also when we look at DCF, we look at the State Department of Education, there's been a big push in the Senate to try to add more to their responsibility, really a whole list of regulations, a lot of which are unfunded, which falls to the towns to have to do. There really needs to be an effort through the Government Accountability Office, and there's been some good committee, I should say. There's been some good proposals to strengthen the look for audits, for accountability, really getting an inspector general type of position to really see what we can do to better help the agencies if they need help, or better guide them. Because the last thing we want is any kid neglected, any kid abused, any kid harmed. But we also don't want to see kids who are not being abused, not being neglected, not being harmed, or being educated in homeschooling, tagged unnecessarily, and by extension, the parents and those teaching them from homeschooling. In the Senate, there's a continued big push to move things towards a lot of regulation. And I think you'll see, especially next session, where I'm sure a lot will come up, including from some of the senators involved, again, a big push for lots of regulation. And you'll see a big fight on it. People know where I stand. I think there's things we should empower the agencies to do better. That doesn't require more rules or regulations. So I think we're gearing up next year for a big fight in the Senate. I'm sure that's going to happen in the House as well. So I tell people, stay tuned, because there's already work being done by people on both sides of the issue, where we go, because I think, where do we go? February, we start, or just a couple of months next year. That's just around the corner, and literally plans are being made now for what's going to be done when we gavel into session. So that's why it's great to have you here to know more about what's going on, and for us to hear from you, so that when we're up sometimes in the middle of the night, especially those of us who talk on and on in the Senate sometimes, to be able to be informed and educated to fight on your behalf. So stay tuned, but I know there's some of the senators, a number of them are very geared up and seem energetic to push this that they couldn't get done this session. They just want to pick right back up, and that's the sense we're getting in the Senate.
Thank you, and good word, Senator. Just a couple of things I want to keep on. I'm going to be brief. I want you to keep in mind. So we're going to listen to your stories today, but I also want you to keep in mind that if there's legislation that you want to actually have us put into law for you, that's what our job is. So our job is, so you can't put in legislation on your own. You have to go through a legislator, whether it's a House member or Senate member or both. It's a good idea to try both. But you also make sure you know that, make sure you know who your legislator and senator are and how are they working on your behalf. So you need to know who they are, and make sure that if there's an issue that comes up, they know where you stand on that and how you want them to represent you in the House or the Senate. So tonight doesn't just have to be about your experiences, but if there's something that you can want to keep in mind that, hey, can you put a legislation in on behalf of us, or whatever it may be, doesn't matter what it is. But just let you know, we're the avenue for that. So tonight, there's legislation that you think that would be helpful, whether we talk about it tonight or in further discussions. But again, make sure that you know who your legislator, your House and Senate members, make sure they know who you are if an issue comes up. You did a great job coming up to the legislature last year. Many of us had you come up, get on the House floor and get, be visible. They knew that, and especially in the House, they knew that you were present and that your concerns were being heard. So keep that up. So now it's, I believe, their turn.
Okay. It's the list of people. I have one question card. I don't know if I should do the question card after or do the questions first. I think we'll do the questions first. So Sarah is first. Me next. It's easier for people to hear.
So I get nervous with the microphone. So my name is Sarah Pereira. I'm a Democratic registered in Tolland. I got a couple different things to say because I know that there's. I can feedback. You can't hear me, and I don't have to use the mic. So there's certainly some people in this room that we have a difference of opinion. So I definitely want to do a couple things. So one, you guys wanted to hear from my kid. He's 5. His bedtime is exactly right now. But I did talk to him and I was like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. And he knows Tammy. And I said, hey, I'm going to go talk to her. What do you want me to say? So his words were, I have ADHD and I'm super smart, and he is.
He's very smart.
I get in trouble at school. My mom teaches me. I get to do math and I learn about the Big Bang. And then he wanted everyone to know about the Big Bang, which we're not going to get into. I'm also a foster parent. I also have a role where I audit and review medical professionals in the state of Connecticut for abuse and neglect claims and what have they done that have caused deaths and abuse. So I have various things on here. I have some kids who are in public school. I have some kids who aren't. To a point of public school isn't doing what they need to do, because my foster kids and my adopted kids who still go to public school, I don't care about attendance, and they are certainly out of school more than that time that they're supposed to be. We go on trips. We do local co-ops when there's something that's fun, and I'm like, oh, that's way better than going to school. They certainly are out of school more than the attendance policy, and no one has ever called. No one has ever asked, even for my foster kids. So why are we doing more legislation? I also wanted to say that, so I am part of an international homeschooling group of secular and inclusive homeschoolers. And so I proposed what's on here, and I said, hey, what's really going on in your state? So in Oklahoma, they have oversight, but no one ever checks on them. In Missouri, they have to do 1,000 hours, but no one ever checks on them. In Indiana, they have to do 180 days, but no one ever checks on that. In Michigan, no one ever checks. In Virginia, they have to do a standardized test, but they do the CAT, which I have my kids do standardized tests, and I also do a program, IXL, which you guys know. Some of our public schools use IXL also. And I put in state standards, and my kids are always above that. And if they're not, then we work on it. So again, my 5-year-old, he's at 3rd grade math, he's at 1st grade English, and he's above for science. Maine, which is one of the ones that's on here that we want to emulate, is they just have to say, yep, we thought about doing some English. And that's all that really happens. New Hampshire gets money, so are we going to copy New Hampshire and then you're going to pay me? Because I would love, let's do that. So again, I knew I wasn't going to make everyone happy. So well, you know, my tax dollar got to go someplace. I'm getting to the end. Sorry, I had a lot of notes. So as far as if there's a DCF report from public school, so we're going to punish the people that public school is failing, which is why they pulled their kids out to homeschool. That makes no sense to me. So just because something happened, there was a report mandated. By all means, we certainly, again, we all want to make sure kids are safe. But there was a report, and then just because we had our kids in public school, we're gonna have extra eyes on us? That makes no sense, because that also makes it so that people who are abusing their children are never going to put them in public school in the first place. They're not going to try it. Now, some people you knew that you were going to homeschool your kids before they were ever even born, but for a lot of people, the school has failed in various ways, and so they get pulled. That makes no sense to me. And again, as a foster parent, CF doesn't know their own policies. I spend all day arguing with people and arguing with case managers and social workers. They don't know their own policies. I know that my report with the Manchester DCF office, see, Diane, you and I, we can get along. But so I know my report at the Manchester, there's a big file on me saying that I like to play with knowing the laws, but every time they take me to task, I'm right. and they keep giving me kids. So it can't be that bad. You know, so, and again, DCF has failed. They keep failing. There's no reason this Waterbury case. DCF should have followed up when that child was never re-enrolled in another school. I know we all know it's not about homeschooling, but that's their own policy and they didn't even follow it. So we're going to make them have more policies. We're going to try to teach all these social workers that, again, they leave. They get in, they leave. No one, there's no consistency. So, and again, on my day-to-day job, I do abuse and neglect claims. I know that I do the best that I can. I know that my coworkers do the best that we can. We don't catch everything. And even when we do, sometimes our hands are tied and there's not much going on. Like, oh, okay, this agency needs to make a new policy. And we hope that it doesn't happen again. So we're just gonna keep on, we're making legislation for no reason. My time is kind of, sorry, I'm taking a long time. But I think that was all my stuff. But thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next, we have Alex Sherwood. How about this? How about I ask you some questions? Make it a little bit easier for you. Are you homeschooled? Do you like it? Yeah. Can you tell me why? Were you in public schools before? You were, and now you're homeschooled. Can you tell me a little bit about why you're homeschooled or what the difference is between the school that you're in, the school that you're doing now?
I think that public school, in homeschool, you can get like more time with your family and you can take breaks. You're not behind the desk all day. And it doesn't take too long.
Do you find that are you learning a lot? Yes. What's your favorite subject?
Reading.
Reading. What do you like to read? I love reading. I love reading. We could talk about reading. You should read Harry. The best series. It's a big book, but it's so worth it. So what do you think is important for me to know when I go back to Hartford to talk about homeschooling and any rules and regulations that we're putting in regarding that? Do you feel like what's the most important thing you think I need to remember when I'm talking to people about writing laws that are going to affect your school situation? It is a big question. Do you feel like it would be, okay, how would I say it this way? How would you feel if we said you have to go back to public school and you couldn't be homeschooled?
Terrible.
And do you feel like everything about homeschooling helps you? Like, do you feel like you have friends and you get to do things and you feel safe and appreciated being homeschooled?
Yes.
Is there anything else you want to tell me? Well, thank you so much for coming up. No. Yeah, I think it's important that, we listen to the kids too, because, my daughter, when I have 3 kids, all went through Tolland schools, and my kid had a point where, she struggled with testing and stuff like that at school. So I understand the fact that they get to take more time. They get to do things along the levels that they want. And I taught CCD for 17 years and making a boy sit at a desk for an hour and not move. I learned, let them walk around, let them draw, let them, as long as they're listening, I didn't care. So, I don't know that a public school can always do that. You can't just let kids wander around the classroom and answer you randomly, but at home you can. So I get it.
Kathy DiCaprio. You get the follow as a 9-year-old.
I'm a veteran homeschooler, and that's why I want to speak. My husband and I homeschooled from 1993 to 2018. So what's that, 25 years, okay? My concern is some of the words that I hear. I'm assuming that the powers that be that want to make regulation think that they are helping homeschoolers. Okay, but words like equivalency and standardized tests concern me. The beauty and why homeschoolers do better on standardized tests is because of the flexibility that is offered. I have 7 children. They all excel in the field that they have chosen. But one of them out of the 7, probably with my hardest one, he's now state college. Oh, you should have said that. But anyway, anyway, when he was 6, he still didn't know his alphabet. He struggled in standard, 2 plus 2 is 4. 7, still, I let him be a little boy. I worked with him every day because I filled out the notice of intent. I promised I'm going to teach those 8 ones. And I slowly saw him get better. And he was probably reading high school level when he was in 7th grade. If I didn't let him, if he was in public school, he probably would have been labeled as needing special help or whatever. Little boy that couldn't sit in front of the desk. Okay, so when I hear equivalency to what? The whole reason why homeschooling works is because you have the flexibility to cater to your children's bents, their gifts. I have one that went to Yale. If you ever would have told me that I would have had a child that got into Yale School of Music, it wasn't just because he was good at music, but he wouldn't have even gotten that far in music if he didn't have the flexibility. You know what? Let's put off Algebra 2 for a while. Let's put off this subject for a while. That's why homeschooling works, is because they don't have, I understand why the public school has to do that, because you have how many kids, you have to do standardized tests. I personally did not do standardized tests. I had friends that did, but I knew which concepts in 4th grade math my kids didn't know. Not necessarily, and so what if they're behind in 4th grade? It's what they are when they're 18. All 7 of my children are functioning adults. They work, they've earned a living, and their work, it works. You can't put the public system onto homeschoolers. They think that they're going to help. The whole DCF thing is one other thing. But if they think that their rules are going to help homeschoolers, they are wrong. They're going to harm homeschoolers to be effective and to get their children to be what they want to be in their life. It's going to harm. It's not even going to be neutral. It is going to harm. I'm glad that we didn't have the rules that we had, because I had the freedom to just, at first I was afraid, okay, it's kind of scary, and it's like, I didn't know even what a 1st grader did, but then when I went to the first portfolio review and they saw that my daughter was reading and answering questions and reading a sentence and answering a question in a full sentence, it's like, they didn't even want to see me anymore. But it's like you can't put the public system onto a family. It doesn't even make sense to do that. It won't be effective. It's going to hurt. That's what they need to know. It's not going to just be neutral. It's going to hurt homeschoolers.
Now we get Mama, Rebecca.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Urrutia, and I'm a homeschooling mom of 4 here in Tolland. 3 of our kids we pulled from the public school system, and our youngest we're homeschooling her from the start. We're really excited and super nervous. 5-year-olds are wild. But what I really wanted to say was that I have a lot of questions about why does the state need so much information about how many people are homeschooling? If not, like, the only thing that I could think of is by registering with the public school, maybe that the state could get money for those students. But in the meantime, a lot of families in this town and surrounding towns have had a really terrible experience in the public schools. And to have to go back, to the system that failed you to prove that you're not abusing your children is insanity. That's just totally insane. And in the meantime, I know it's like actually crazy. In the meantime, I am, ever since we've pulled our kids, I'm watching them thrive at home and in community. I'm watching them stand up for themselves. I'm watching them be able to socialize with people of all ages, be able to nurture younger ones and look up to older ones. The socialization that we have gotten through homeschooling is so far beyond what we had when we were in the public school and never saw each other. And we're having it as a family, which is just incredible. And in terms of equivalency, the things that the public schools are required to teach are not not all of them are constitutionally required. So to require equivalency, it seems like it would need to require a change in constitution. Where we would then need to be agreeing to equivalency with the school system instead of equivalency with the Constitution. We educate our children in everything that we're constitutionally required to, and so much more just by living. But in terms of academics, we're sent the list of subjects that we're required to educate them in, and we educate them in those subjects at their own pace so that they can actually learn them. And if they need more time, they can take more time. And if they're really interested in it, we can go visit a museum and dive in more, or watch a documentary, or meet somebody who has experience with it. So, so to ask for us to go to a failing, to a system that has failed us to show that we're doing the same thing as them feels like something I'm not interested, and most homeschoolers aren't interested in doing. If it's a matter of trying to figure out how many homeschoolers are in Connecticut, then I want to know why. They want to know that information, and kind of to what end. And it's probably not going to be a good end. It doesn't seem like it would be a good end, no matter what, because we're already exercising our constitutional rights with our children. So that's the question I have, is like that I would love for you to ask is why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about that.
I'm writing notes to you. As you're saying things. So I know where you can talk to her. I think the first thing, you talked about registering homeschoolers and why. And when I was on children's, the chair, after Michael Toronto's case happened, they said, we want to register. And I said, well, why do you want to know that? What does it matter? He says, well, we want to know how many numbers, because if they come back into the school system. And I said this years ago, I promise you, I don't know any homeschooler that would go back into the school system. So that was the reason then. The other thing, you said also, and they always say we want to know where they are, like for registration. Where are the kids? How many are out there? And I said, well, where are the truant kids? So again, it's not like we can even keep track of the kids in this public school system. So that's, the answer to your question. They want to do it. These are the reasonings they give, but they don't make sense. And it's silly. It's not silly because it's scary, but it's silly. So those are the answers that they will give you and have given, because they want to know how many come back.
But the thing is that, like, children are not required to enroll in the public school system. So they're taking something that we're already not required to do by law and then requiring us to do it anyway. So we really need to, I think we really need to be careful about asking people to do something that's legally not required.
Say anybody wants to sign up.
Yeah. Are you okay? I was just trying to ask you to kind of put this together, so Ray?
Right, we're done? I'll be back. If you want to sign up, I'm gonna put this, over here, if anybody else wants to come and sign up, or, after I get through the list, you can just, okay, that's it. Hi. How are you? What's it? Your name was again? Right there, okay. Like this, you wanna take this, or you want me to ask you questions? You got it? You want me to ask you questions? All right. I didn't know I was gonna be on spot for asking questions. Have you always been homeschooled?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, and, how do you feel your education is?
Really good.
Yeah. What's favorite subject?
I like spelling
And reading? What's favorite book?
I like the little house on the prairie.
Very good, I read those. I read a lot. Okay, so what would it mean for you? I'm gonna ask you the same question that I asked, Alex there. What would it mean for you if we said, you know, you had to go back to the school system? What would that, how do you think that would make you feel?
No, I don't think I would want to go.
No.
Because I like
Do you feel like, this is the kind of education that works well with you? Do you feel like you learn a lot and you get to do a lot of things? Like you don't, you feel like you're missing out on anything by not being in a school classroom? No? Okay. How often do you go to school? Do you go every day? How, is it like Monday through Friday, like regular school, or is it, less formal? Like, how often do you sit down and study with your parents?
well, we don't sit down like all the time. Sometimes we go out, do things, learn more that way.
Okay, that's good. So do you think, you know, you're learning something every day that you would learn in a typical classroom?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So what do you want me to know? Right. I'm your representative. You live here in town. So, you know, what do you want me to know? What do you want me and Jeff and, you know, we're the representatives here for Tolland to go back to Hartford and say is important to you homeschool? You know, that's okay. That's totally fine. I ask big questions. That's all.
It's working, leave it alone.
Freedom.
And you have siblings too, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
And you're all homeschooled?
Yes.
Yes. And you're all doing pretty well, right? Perfect. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming.
So with the like the we've homeschooled our kids since so 18,
Hold up the mic.
17, 18 years now. Yeah. We've homeschooled since they were born. They've all achieved tremendous things through their life with the interests that they have. My second oldest is going for his pilot's license, 15. It wouldn't be able to do that if he was in public school. Um, we have involvement with Makers, CT, and Hartford. It's fantastic for STEM, CAT, and all that. They learned a immense amount through them. They're involved in so many different things like through the town, through the state, like just being just more aware of what's going on in the actual world instead of what's being taught in the public school world. I think it's very important to have, like, even if they, you know, I think it would be more important to have the public school would be more like homeschool, like have the opportunities from the kids. When I was in school, we had band, we had, you know, the arts, we had, home ec, you know, and all that, you know, wood shop, metal class, and that's all gone away. So these are the things the kids that homeschool are learning now. I have three friends are like, they're going to be blacksmiths, you know, at, you know, 13, 14 years old. They're going to like learn to be fairs. They're learning to be like a bunch of different things in the world that actually make a difference rather than just being taught to take tests and just be autonomous to what's going on, like what the companies need them to do to make money. I think that's a shame on our education system, complete shame on our education system, because there's so much more on the world and so much more education that needs to be taught to these kids. I mean, there's kids in Harvard that don't know what a tomato is. I mean, how awful is that? That's absolutely terrible. It's atrocious. And It's on the legislators in our government, on the people who don't want to have our kids be educated. They just don't want it. They just, I don't feel that they want it. That's my personal opinion.
You had said that you went to public education.
Yeah, I went through private and public education.
Okay. Both spouse, your wife also.
My wife went through public education. Her parents are both teachers as well.
And you made that decision right away. The kids, you said they never went to public school.
Have never been to school.
How
Like
old is you?
17. He's 17.
One is 17, but the 15-year-old one. I thought.
Yeah, so I have 17, 15, 13, and 12.
Okay. So, thank you. And that was always a decision, though.
Yes,
Yeah.
from the start.
Can I ask what the key factor was?
Just looking at the education system as a whole and them not technically teaching anything substantial. And it's all, dittos and it's, standardized testing. Like it's like, and most of the schools do standardized testing because they need the funding. It's not because they need the kids to be smart. They just teach standardized testing. So when you teach them that just to get federal funding, then what do the kids actually learn? Like they're not really learning anything. They're learning how to take a test. Like they go to college and what do? They take a test. Like, oh, I need this handed in by this time. And then when you go to a company, oh, I need this done by this time. It's all like you're learning how to do standardized stuff through your entire life because of that. And it's not how human beings should live. It's not how kids should be taught. It's not how they should live their lives. And kids should be having fun. They should be enjoying their lives. They shouldn't be sitting there behind a desk every single day in a concrete block every single day, learning how to take a test. It's just,
Thank you. Well, thank you.
Because on the education committee, there was a bill. On the education committee, there was a bill that came out. It was proposed for kids in the public school to have a connection with the Science Museum in Hartford, which is great, right? And so, but your daughter saying she gets to go out, and homeschoolers do these things. And so to the point of helping homeschooling and all. So this is great. I'm going to take it back. So when that bill comes up, I haven't written that. Your daughter.
because there's also the art museum in I believe it's New Britain used to do a program for the kids where they would go in and they would learn about the artist. They would go take a tour of it and then they would paint how the artist painted. So that's huge. They don't do that anymore.
One of the things that comes up often is that parents aren't qualified to teach their children. Can you speak to that?
There are to say parents that qualified to teach their children, I think is kind of slapping the face to parents. Because even if they've only had a high school education or not had a high school education, there are so many different programs and opportunities out there for them, especially now, to have their kids be more educated even than they are. And as they do the programs with kids, they also learn those same things. So it's not that parents are uneducated, not educated enough to teach their children, because we're in a technological age. It's not like back in like 1970s where you had to go to the library and look at encyclopedias. You have the technology or the information there at your fingertips. So if parents know how to surf anything, or like my kids know how to surf everything. So if they need to learn something, they just learn it. Like if I'm at work and they need to look something up, they just look it up. They learn it that way. I mean, not to say there's, not opportunities to have, like people have that because they don't have access to the internet or computers and things like that because of, social or economic things, but it's still there. They can go to the library, they can do things like libraries still exist, though people don't recognize that libraries still exist sometimes, but yeah, yes, they do. Those definitely exist. Yeah. And the town library is fantastic for opportunities that they have for them. So, but
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I like my
I just have a quick question for Sarah because we didn't get to ask you questions. Can you just, are foster families allowed to homeschool their children?
So I cannot, but so the criteria when I take in kids, is that they will participate. So they go to school, then we just set that up. And we catch them up. A lot of times kids, are a little behind, and so we catch them up. And that's something that public schools have been doing. Public schools are putting them, in another room, or they're not doing the tutoring that they're supposed to. So when we come home, we do stuff before the bus comes in the morning, we do stuff when they get home. And when you homeschool, you can do an entire day's worth of stuff in an hour.
I know.
So, it's not I will say that I do exempt them from homework because they're doing homework with me. But yeah, we don't, and all my kids have been able to catch up or exceed. Like I said, I use IXL, which again is a program that a lot of the public schools use. And I have it set for Connecticut state standards, and I make sure that my kids all are either at or above Connecticut state standards for the.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions? Okay, Diana. Come this way so you don't go here. There you go.
I'm Diana. I'm a homeschooling mom. I live in this district. Prior to that, I worked for the Department of Children, Youth, and Families in the state of Rhode Island. Prior to that, I was an early childhood educator. I just want to say real quick, in regards to the public schools, I think that they've demonstrated they don't have a good capability of keeping kids safe, even at school. We've all seen the headlines. We've seen these bad apple teachers and staff. We've seen bullying. We've seen all kinds of things that clearly the kids, they're not even safe at school. Often the schools also don't accurately identify abuse and neglect going on at home. I mean, that's the Waterbury case. That's the Matthew Dorado case. So there's lots of issues with that as well. And they don't adequately educate all kids. There are so many kids who are falling behind. We've already kind of talked about that. So if that's the public school system in a nutshell, I don't see what business they have judging me. I think that they need to address their own failures before they even look at me as a homeschool parent. And as far as, identifying abuse and neglect, that's going on with homeschoolers, I get it. Of course, you want to make sure that kids are safe, but what you're talking about, meeting with people once a year or even more than once a year, that's not going to do it. Somebody who wants to cover up criminal behavior is going to do it. They're going to find a way. Showing up to the school office once a year, that's not going to solve your problem. So it's not going to help. It's just going to be a huge inconvenience for your school system, for your parents, and everybody else. I also want to touch on the recent information that's come out. The National Homeschool Education Legal Defense had submitted some FOIA requests in regards to this whole, legislative session and what's been going on. And they uncovered that the Office of the Child Advocate had drafted a bill within like a week of the Waterbury case being announced on the news. Before the facts were even all known about that case, they had already drafted a bill. They were already sharing it with certain legislators. This is in March. And they never told anybody. There was no public knowledge of this bill being drafted. So that informational hearing, which you can't really call a hearing because the public wasn't involved, they weren't heard. Nobody was heard. That was a sham. The whole thing was a sham. the child advocate was sitting there in that hearing and never once mentioned that she had drafted a bill that she had shared with any legislator. She never mentioned any language at all. Was also uncovered in that draft that they had originally put some language about vaccine mandates in that drafted bill that they later took out, but you know, it's still a draft, so we can add that back in. And it just kind of makes you wonder, well, why is that being hidden from the public? Why isn't it being shared with all the legislators? Why is there a working group going on all summer long at the Capitol that's not talking about this drafted bill that's being shared? Nobody mentioned that. And, you know, it seems like an attempt to go after the same population that they went after in 2021 with the religious exemption repeal bill that barred kids from school, even if they were missing one shot on the schedule, can't go to school. Now you want to make everybody, including homeschooled kids. Why would they put that language in there? That's my question. This is obviously an attempt to go after the same people again, whether it's in there now or not. And then I just also wanted to say really quick about why it's so important to be able to homeschool freely without testing or evaluations. A couple people already touched on this, that if you're teaching kids to perform well on a test, because they're going to be tested on this topic and they need to have a passing score, where's the interest level for the kid? We can all say, oh, I learned about pre-algebra when I was in 9th grade, but I don't remember any of it now, because they weren't interested in it. They were only learning it because they had to and because they were going to be tested. Whereas when you're homeschooling, you can decide what kids are interested in and teach them that when they're ready, even if it doesn't fit their grade level or whatever standardized test is coming up or evaluation. And they're going to be more likely to remember all of those things that they learned. It's going to stick with them because, you know, it mattered. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next we have Beckett Murray. Great plan. Oh, that's fine. Yeah, wonderful.
No. So, I am a public school student, but I was reading this report that is weird, and I know that the state currently has 0 regulations in place for homeschooling. Not true. That's what I said.
No.
That's what I've been told. Everyone in this room is against child abuse. And if you aren't, I don't know what you're thinking. What I am seeing on that report is trying to prevent child abuse. So, like, it's going to be like a once a year checkup to make sure that your children aren't being abused. Most people aren't abusing their kids. We need a way to check up on the kids to make sure that they aren't getting abused. That's what I think is, I want children to not be abused. Thank you.
Thank you. Isabella? Oh, sorry.
Thank you for coming up to speak. I just wanted to make a couple comments about that. So this was all a fallout from the Waterbury case. That child was in public school for 5 full years, stealing food from garbages, people's lunches, and so on and so forth, and had many reports made about that. So eyes on the children in public school, you know, aren't being successful. So to check in once a year, I think one of the parents said, how are you going to know that a child's abused? And BCF, by the way, did go to that child's home. So did the police several times. I don't have the exact number, 9 times. So, you know, I don't believe that any of these proposed regulations are going to prevent child abuse. I just wanted to say that, but thank you for speaking. Appreciate that.
Thank you. I would just want to say thank you for coming up here and saying that. And I hope you love your school. That is so wonderful, right? And we want everybody to be successful. And I think you're right about no one wants a child to be hurt. And if they are, it needs to be looked into. You're absolutely right. And so when these CCF cases happened, those are the kids, if they're substantiated. But I agree, that's where we need to be looking, not a broad brush of everybody. We need to look at the kids that really are being abused and see what we can do to help them. So I just want to thank you for coming up. I think that was great.
I too want to say thank you. I know it's not easy coming up and saying what you said, but I appreciate you did. And it reminds us that we do need to do better in state government with the agencies and policies and huge resources that we have. We do need to do a better job making certain that state government is there checking on kids in all sorts of situations. In addition to being a senator, I'm also a doctor. I'm a mandated reporter. I don't take care of kids, but I can tell you the situations I have to report, knowing what I know that parents are doing. And we want to make certain that kids are kept safe. I think we need to make certain that if we're going to be looking into additional ways to help the state agencies or people are proposing laws, we don't have unintended consequences that hurt other things. And one thing I also want to quickly say, and I've said this a lot to people, including my constituents who ask me, while we're looking to defend parental rights for those parents who choose homeschooling, that they feel it's right for their kids, that's fine. But we also want to make certain that the state, I believe, should do a better job as well for all the kids. A lot of that gets to funding, who are in the public school system. And we should be able to do both at the same time in this state as a state government and state legislature. So anything that we're talking about trying to protect homeschooling, in my mind, doesn't take away from anything that one's looking at for the public schools. Both can coexist. And to give that opportunity for those who want to be in public school or their parents want them and those who don't for homeschooling. But I think when we're talking about homeschooling, talking about public education, those I see as two different tracks. And what we can do to help both and make certain helping one isn't hurting the other and vice versa, that's our role to strike the balance. And that's where we come to sometimes having to say no to things, but also looking to where we can come to agreement and say yes to make certain both can move forward in a better way. So I appreciate what you said because it reminds me of those different things, and I wanted to make certain that people once again hear from me on that, Mark.
No problem. Thank you, Isabella. Hi, how are you? Okay. Do you have anything you want to say specifically, or are you going to put me on the question list? We put you on the question. You're going to put me on the question list. Okay. All right. How long have you been homeschooled?
This is my third year.
Okay, so you were in public school prior to. So, tell me about the differences that you feel that you experience between being in public school and being homeschooled, and which is better for you.
Homeschooling is so much better because you don't waste so much time walking from classroom to classroom.
There's that. There's a lot of that. How about from the educational opportunities? Do you feel like you were in you were in school for probably what, good 4 or 5 years? All right. So do you feel like you learn better in one environment than the other?
I learned a lot better in homeschooling just because you don't have to have a certain schedule. And in public school, I was always getting like the teacher would always tell you to put down a book because I'm crazy about reading. And the teachers are always like, be done reading, pay attention to the class. But in homeschooling, I can read as much as I want because basically all in homeschooling is always book. And it's my favorite thing ever. So, and I could go at my own pace and you could get ahead on the subject and not wait for other kids. So
that's a good point. That's a good point. Do you feel like you're challenged enough at home? Like you're excelling, or do you feel like, maybe you're not learning as much? Like, how do you feel from a lessons perspective, like history or something like that, do you feel like you're equivalent to your other friends that are in school? Because I'm assuming you still have friends who are in public school. So do you feel like, oh, when they talk about stuff, you're like, I don't know anything about that, or I know about that plus stuff?
I mean, there's a few things that they talk about because in homeschooling, they don't just put you on the spot, they kind of work you up to it. But in public school, they kind of just say, well, now you're learning this.
So if you're not ready to go on, or you want to delve into a subject more, you have that ability at home, whereas you don't at school. Okay. And do you feel like me as your representative in Hartford, right? So what do you want me to know, Jeff and Tim to know when we go back to Hartford and they start talking about these regulations? What should I tell them from you as a homeschooler? What's important for you in this?
I think it's important that I stay homeschooled and that they know that it's a free country. We should be able to do what we want to do.
Well, I think you just wrapped it up for me. Thank you. Next, I have Annalise.
Hello, my name's Annalise Harper. I just want to say hi, senators and representatives. I had the privilege of growing up, honestly, seeing a lot of you support homeschooling with my mom, Donna, in person when she did Capitol Days, and saw Senator Gordon at the 4-H fair a couple years ago when I was president there. So I just wanted to thank you all for your support and everything. I was homeschooled my whole life, and I'm very thankful to have been. I couldn't have asked for a better education, for a better childhood, time with my siblings, time with my family. I just have some thoughts I need to pull together. I'm very thankful because I always had the choice. We were never forced to be homeschooled. Whenever it was maybe not wanting to do a particular fraction problem, my mom always said, well, do you want to go to public school next year? And I might have been tempted, but as soon as I always remembered that I would have to wake up at 6 a.m. for a school bus, lacking lots of sleep, probably having to have done homework late into the night before, having had no time outside, no time with family, having to sit at a desk for 8 hours in a day, even on a beautiful sunny September day. There was never any reason for me to want to go to public school because I knew from a very early age that they did not have my best interests in mind. They might have thought they did. They might have attempted to care for the children as best they could, but that was not going to be healthy. That was not going to be helpful for me as a human, or any human for that matter. Public school is right for some people and isn't for others. And I believe that everyone should always have that choice. As many people have already said, homeschooling provides a full opportunity for love of learning and to really master a subject and not just learn it to take a test. When I was 16, I took English 101 at Manchester Community College, and it was review for me, not because I was particularly smart, but because I had been allowed to learn that at a very early age and master it, while whole college-age students were struggling right next to me. Again, not because I was smart, but because I had been encouraged and facilitated to learn those things and really master them. Cut forward to today, I am going into my senior year of college at Eastern Connecticut State University as a social work student. And that has given me a very unique perspective because social workers, as we've heard from some tonight, and as we were talking about, are very involved in all of this. And it's funny because when you say you're going to school for social work, the first thing everyone says to you is, oh, so you're going to be poor for the rest of your life. Yeah, that's the perception, and that is what you're told. You're told you're going to be burnt out. You're told you're going to be overwhelmed. You're not going to make enough money. So why would anyone want to become a social worker? Why would anyone want to stay? Why does anyone try to work hard at that? Because they're doing their best, but they're overworked. There's not enough social workers in school systems. They cannot even begin to attend to the amount of cases that might be reported or notice the little things and notice when a child is being abused or neglected. And they're not being paid enough. And so again, so clearly to me, it is reminding me, it is not a problem of homeschooling. It is not a homeschool parent's fault. This is a problem with these agencies, with the government, with those who are paying these social workers, those who are involved in child protective services. And it is on them, not on homeschoolers. So
I'll ask you an easy question. Great to see you again and that you're doing well, and reminds me of my son who's going to be a senior and he wants to do social work and child development, although I didn't say that he couldn't stay at home. And depending on what job he gets, it's great to still have him at home at times. But one of the questions I have is, have you found in any way that you were lacking, that when you chose the track of doing homeschooling, doing what you're doing now in college, that you were behind anybody? Do you feel that you were adequately prepared to move on to college and move on to your career path, having done homeschooling and learned at the pace and the way that worked for you? Please.
Absolutely. I feel more than enough prepared. And I think one thing that many people have mentioned is that with homeschooling, you're allowed to interact with people of all ages. And I cannot begin to account for the amount of times that has helped me when I have classmates who are the same age as me, who are terrified to talk to the professor because they've never learned how to talk to an adult or someone who isn't their age, or who haven't had opportunities to interact with young children and perform a mentorship role or just a aiding other people role. Over and over again, that has allowed me to interact appropriately with professors, gain the help I needed, be an advocate for myself. That is a huge one. You're not often taught to be an advocate for yourself in the public school system, from what I've heard from almost every public school student ever. And my mom is a very independent woman who has taught all of her daughters to be as well, and to stand up for ourselves and to speak clearly, to seek out what we need to do the best we can. And I think that really prepared me well.
Leslie? Wolf? I'm sorry, Wolfgang, it's all right.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Thank you. My name is Leslie Wolfgang, and I'm an attorney, and I represent the Family Institute of Connecticut at the Capitol as a lobbyist. I am a public high school graduate, and I appreciate the education I received. I appreciate the efforts of the legislators as well. I also agree with the sentiment that there is plenty of room for both homeschooling, private, and public schooling. We need to let each do their thing as they know best. They can even complement each other. I also homeschooled my 7 kids in Connecticut for 20 years. We had friend groups, other families for support, extracurricular activities, theater, sports, graduations. There were parents who never attended college. There were also doctors and attorneys who were educating their kids. Homeschoolers in Connecticut cross every spectrum of race, gender, religion, philosophy, and political party. For every kind of person, there is a homeschool subgroup, and my children met them. I want to remark on the proposal. This proposal isn't a homeschool regulation. It's a universal reporting requirement for every family in Connecticut to document their kids are in good health to a state official. It is draconian and fascist, a violation of our free rights in a free country. Having to report to authorities without any finding of abuse or neglect is a violation of equal protection under the law and probably due process. There are thousands of Connecticut homeschool kids. There aren't enough mental health or physical providers to provide an annual evaluation, and to what end? If they were able to suss out any kids, there won't be enough resources left for adequate treatment or management. Resources would be overextended, and there wouldn't be enough resources to help kids who need therapy. Therapists and overworked school administrators, there's just enough. They will be too busy analyzing healthy kids, and it's a poor use of mental health resources. If you require some children
to come back to a school building, you will traumatize them. Many are healing from the abuse they received in public school. We know their story. As Connecticut parents, we know their story because many of us homeschool our kids because we were mentally or physically abused in Connecticut public schools. Connecticut, you have your own house to clean before you force these kids and families to come in and submit to authorities. Homeschool kids are not being raised on the moon. They are probably exposed to more mandated reporters than a publicly schooled child. You don't have enough resources to tend to the kids who are being abused. How would the state possibly be able to track down homeschoolers that don't comply? And any bad or abusive homeschooler won't comply. But there will be fewer resources to track down abusive parents because resources will be devoted to a giant, unnecessary fishing expedition, punishing and throwing shade on good parents. If I had one question for the legislators or for policymakers, I see in the group chats on Facebook, there's a lot of parents who are worried that this is just a duplication of the vaccine fight. So I want us to think about that and maybe offer advice, maybe throw some distinctions on how this could be different, how it is different, and to still encourage parents to come up to the legislature, even though they may not see results right away.
Thank you. I absolutely have to say we need to encourage parents to stay involved because, again, that over 2,000 people on the Capitol that one day, your voice was heard. Like you couldn't not be in that building and not hear it. We heard it was chanting in the appropriations room. I was chuckling. I had to walk out. I was like, I have to go see. You have to be present and you have to be vocal. This is your decision. These are your children that you're fighting for. So take a lot of homeschool visits to the Capitol. We got a lot of really cool stuff up there.
I just wanted to say thank you, Leslie, for that. And how many in this room know who your representative is? Okay, some of you don't, but that's good. Good. How many of you know who your senator is? How many of you know that if you saw them in the grocery store, they'd know who you are? About a third of you. I always tell people that you should know who they are, but more than that, they should know who you are. That's how much you should be communicating with them. And that includes your family, your brothers, your sisters, your mothers, all of them are invested in your kids. Get them involved and do the same. They should know who all of you are so you can be a voice for them. And that's what I would add to the medical freedom thing. I think that if all of the families that came up brought their extended families, which I'm sure some of them did, but work on getting that army. And Leslie, thank you for mentioning what's going on in the schools, because back to the schools, right? We know that there's a lot of dangers in the schools. We had a child at Cheshire School commit suicide, and nobody recognized that child had problems. We had a child in Brantford that got beaten to death by their dad with a bat. Nobody recognized that child, and these kids were in the public school. This person in Waterbury, 5 years in the public school, nothing was done, right? Matthew Toronto. All of these people have been seen by mandated reporters. I'm a nurse. I mean, all of us are responsible for that. So I really want all of you to remind your legislators of that and not to focus on homeschoolers that have really, I'm sure there's a couple of homeschoolers in the state of Connecticut that are abusing their kids. I'm sure of it. But we want them identified. And I know each and every one of you, if you knew that, you'd report them. So we know that's not the problem, but thank you, Leslie. Thank you for speaking.
Thank you, Leslie. And this is a really important point that you should feel that you can find us or whoever your state rep and state senator is anytime, although not necessarily in the middle of the night, unless we're up at the Capitol discussing and voting and you want to be there. I can tell you the number of times that I'm in grocery stores, even here in Tolland, and about some of my towns that have grocery stores, that people find me. Even when I go to my town's transfer station, I'm there for several hours because people want to talk with me. That's perfectly fine. You should always feel that you should be able to contact, approach, speak with your legislator. And if you don't hear from your legislator, when you're reaching out, you should redouble your efforts and remind everybody that legislators have bosses. I have 100,000, which are my constituents. I remind people my number one boss is my wife. But we do answer to you, and not just at election time, because we're supposed to be there working for you, and you should very much find those opportunities. And if your legislator doesn't, then challenge them on that and ask them why. So this is why we want to hear from you, to give you an opportunity and self-create opportunities as well whenever you feel you need to.
I'm going to one up Ann just because this is my district and my town. How many in here have my personal cell phone number? They know how to get a hold of me. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go on. Nicole.
I actually came here this evening to just listen and take this all in, but my heart felt a tug. And so bear with me as I gather a few of my thoughts. But they always say you're in mother years, you're as old as your oldest. So I'm an 8-year-old mother, just so you all know, I'm still learning many things. And someone once told me that from birth until 18, you only have 936 weeks. And every time I say that, it brings tears to my eyes because that goes so quick. So I'm here not to just necessarily talk about the public school system that I had a terrible experience with, but I'm here to talk about all the good things that homeschooling has done for my kids. My oldest went to private school for a few years and we struggled. I didn't know until conference time that she couldn't do simple math facts because the teachers are so overwhelmed. They didn't have the time to email me, which shame on some teachers, but at the same time, I understand they have so many kids in the classroom, they can't do it all. So I would find out 6 months into the year that my daughter was not doing well in math. And I'm like, well, what do I do now? Like, how do I catch her up? And so that's where homeschooling started to become a topic in our home more and more, because if I have to then play on the back end to like catch her up, why can't I just take it over and do it on my own? And I remember someone saying to me, well, if you didn't do well in school and if, you struggled, how are you going to teach your kids? And I said, you know what? I think it's a good thing to have our children watch us learn alongside them. And I can't tell you how many times that I've sat there with my kids, I'm like, hey, I don't know how to do this. Let's figure it out. There's so many resources. And as a parent, we have the ability to utilize those resources. So for anybody that's ever been questioned how you are not able, or how are you able to teach your children, it's good to learn with them. And as I spoke with my children this morning, I have 4 little kids. I have an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 9-month-old. And I asked them, I said, why is homeschooling so important to you? And the biggest thing that they touched on and, what they could kind of put together was they love that in the morning, they no longer have to get up and hustle and bustle to get out the door, eat a junky snack before getting to school. We sit down together. We have breakfast, whether it's at 7:30, 6:30, 8:30. And then we have time outside. We get that early morning sun, that fresh air. The kids get that energy out. And then we can sit there for an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and get our work done. And for them, they said that that was the most important part. And we're all learning together. I mean, my 3-year-old and my 9-month-old, it's interesting to homeschool them, homeschool with them. But it's just been a blessing in our home to be able to have that freedom. And my analogy might not be great, so bear with me. But I always say that a locked door only keeps out an honest criminal. So if you're going to have me step into a building once a year to evaluate my children, who's to say that every other day of the year I'm not, doing something else? I don't want any children to have any harm. It breaks my heart to think that any child ever has to go through that. And I know everybody in this room feels the same. Nobody wants that. But I don't think that any of this legislation is actually going to really be able to reinforce, nor do they have the capacity to do so. So that's kind of where I came up to say. And I do have a question on behalf of our co-op. We would love to know, like, if this went right now to a vote, where do we stand? Like, what do the numbers look like? How is this going?
So,
Well, that's a tough, yeah, so.
So, question was, where would the legislation, move if they wanted to move it? So what you need to do is make sure it doesn't get to a vote. Okay, that's the key piece. If it gets to get through a children's committee and or the education committee, I don't think it's probably just gonna go through one committee. The key is that if there's something that you don't want to move forward, that you don't believe is there, you have to stop it before it gets to a certain vote. And that's the advocacy. That's working with all the legislatures throughout the state. So your networking group is the key to this. You did a fantastic job this year. I was so impressed with the effort when I had constituents from my district, many of them. I have 5 towns. I have part of Lebanon, part of Bolton, all of Columbia, all of Coventry, and a sliver of Tolland. So that's why I'm part of this group. And there's going to be others throughout there. I have a lot of homeschooling network in my district. So the DiCaprios know that I have half of that there. The other half of the Mark's district is I share it with Mark. And by the way, your family is in my thoughts. I don't. The key is that, the Calvin Coolidge used to say, it's better to stop a bad bill than pass a good bill. So sometimes what we need to do is be our self-advocates. And if you don't believe that legislation like this is necessary, you have to find a way to continue to do what you do. And the message was sent to the leadership in the House and Senate. It was sent to them knowing that if this bill came to the floor of the House, there was a lot of us that were going to talk, not as long as Jeff Gordon talks, but a lot of us were going to, spend some time on it and ask why the bill was coming forward and why, it doesn't need to move forward and to go to a vote. And so I think there's a lot of work that the state legislature needs to do and focus on, that this isn't part of that we need to focus on as much as that we think we do. Yes, everybody's comments, nobody wants to see any child abuse. We all understand that. But sometimes you start looking at why are we doing these things, and is it to to defer the vision of what needs to be fixed to somewhere else, right? And so I think that what we need to do is to continue to do what you did. Is that, listen, this piece of legislation comes forward, that we need to either do our due diligence as a committee, but if it's and I don't want this to be an R&D, a Republican and Democrat thing, because to be honest with you, everybody is, there's Democrats and unaffiliated and not registered voters, and everybody homeschooling their kids. This isn't a party issue, right? So I think the key is that you need to make sure that your voice is heard and that your legislator, House and Senate member knows your view. And if you don't disagree, or you don't agree with how you want them to vote, there's a thing called November. Comes every 2 years. You make sure you work against that individual to make sure that they're not back in the seat. So that's your thing. Yeah, and let them know, oh, by the way, I will be working for your opponent because your opponent listens to me, or the opposite. If you know somebody that's in support of you, help them, maintain their seat. So, but I think that's a great question. And keep doing what you're doing.
I would add on to Tim, though, not just your own legislator, right? I'm not on education and I'm not on kids, especially, but not education. Email the entire committee for education or special ed, regardless if they're your representative or not, because that's the committee that's going to hear it. So, make it known, make sure you're sending emails, and I would highly suggest them don't do like a petition email, because those just get like, oh, okay, I've got 57 of these. Here's a response back, and do email. Give them the stories that you're giving us today. Tell them, and tell them that, you're, like they said, this is what I want. So it's tell me if you can or can't support that. And if you can't, why? You know, what can you do for me? Let's hit something quick. And then we have about 7 people left. We're going to try to wrap that up in about like half an hour, 40 minutes. So just keep that in mind.
I would just say, meet with your legislator or the people on the committee that it's in, bring your child. Let me tell you, there's some great speakers in this room tonight and kids, and it's an education because most legislators really don't know about it. It's like a lot of things. So I would take your kid, I'd take the time. It's a great civics lesson for your child.
Yep. Next I've got Bill Wise. No. Oh, is he coming? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
He's here. Hey, Bill, here, I'll come to you. I'll come to you. No?
No.
I'll not come to you.
The reason I didn't want you to come to me because the folks couldn't see who was talking.
Oh, okay.
They'd see the back of my head, and my turkey tails that stick up in here. Thank you very much. Tim, I want to know how much you know that Senator Gordon talks. Does it mean you skip out of the house and go away to the Senate and you don't do your work?
The House avoids the Senate like the plague. Yeah.
He lets us know. So I listen to him. Then you're not paying attention to your constituents. Would you turn this down a bit? Stand in front of
Stand, come over this way, sir. You're next to the. You're next to the.
Okay.
To go that side. You gotta get.
How can I do it? You would.
Be okay. He's gonna fix it. You should be okay.
I'm getting a lot of directions
You're good.
by hands, not. And Tammy.
Yeah.
You used in opening comments a word that bothers me very much. You said you wanted to fight for things. Why fight? That takes energy. It wastes energy. Negotiate, talk.
Well, I will. I do.
Don't fight, please.
Well, but I unfortunately, sometimes that's.
No, you can raise your voice, but don't.
Oh, no, I'm not gonna raise my voice. It's negotiating.
Anyway.
I punched off.
I want to come here and look back at education. Because my first grade was in 1941 or 2, 1242, which was ancient history for most of you. It was in another century. And I experienced 4, 5 different first grade. And in the first public school edition, my father came down and brought a large razor strop. It's a big belt for sharpening the razors. And he gave it to Mrs. Cromie and said, you can use this on Billy anytime you want. And here is a case of parental permission to exercise authority. Something that has been taken away from teachers. How many teachers can use authority to discipline unruly students in class in today's school? I had a private school. No, I didn't have it. It had it me. I went into its second grade in a private school. It was a boys' boarding school. Abuse? You bet there was abuse. There was abuse of the older boys on the younger boys. There was abuse in some faculty to the boys. And those were discovered and left. But the thing of it is, the kid who gets abused carries forth the memory of the abuse and has to deal with it somehow in life. And there's nothing we can do, but that's a job for that person. But in today's society, police, anybody in the medical profession, ministers, anybody in the church profession can report abuse if they see signs of abuse between kids of the same age, between adults and children, or even between adults and adults. About staying in school or staying in or homeschooling. Some kids just aren't going to be educated, period. How I ever got an education is really a puzzle. In this boys' school, if I didn't want to do my homework, I didn't. I knew I had to turn stuff in. So one of my strategies was go take a walk in the woods for the day. And I got reported as being not present. What was the outcome? Saturday night at the school, we had a movie. Saturday night, Billy sat in a detention hall and waited while the clock ran through. So that was my punishment. Did it do anything? Maybe sitting in detention hall. Did it change my outlook and behavior? No. Why? Don't ask, I don't know. It was the way it was. What did I find in these schools? Some students, some faculty encouraged. That's the same way it was in public school when I got to high school. Some faculty encouraged, some cultivated you. Not all did. The schools didn't have time to do it. The faculty didn't have time to do it, or didn't know they had time to do it. So some of us dropped out. When I got to 8th grade in Blue Hill, Maine, I learned a little bit about discipline because the teacher had me sitting right up front where I couldn't hide. That was the 13 of us in the 8th grade. The 7th grade was right beside me. Roger was in the 7th grade. He was one of the guys who didn't want, no matter what you did for him. He was 16 and in the 7th grade. So one day the teacher said to Annette Ackert, would you look to see if there's anything in Roger's desk? He lifted up the desk and said, the books are here and there's a note here. I quit. KWIT. And so he walked out of school. What happened to him? Well, by and by he got married. And then there was an accident in a hayloft and he lost his life. So what's this got to do about schooling? Some works and some doesn't. Is there anything against a homeschool? Absolutely not. Would I have gotten ahead in homeschooling? I had a teenage years. I had a fascination with horticulture. And with my mother, we raised orchids. I started new plants. I made cuttings of plants. I talked with people in arboretums. I taught all kinds of learning. So I learned biology that way. But it wasn't the public school. It wasn't the homeschooling. Where am I going with this? In spite of some of my experience as a young man, which I still am after all. That's psychological abuse, perhaps. I've done a bachelor's degree in geology from Colby College. I've got a master's of divinity. I had 5 years in Worcester as a minister in the Episcopal Church and also working with the firefighters and fire department. Chaplain. And then, God bless me, I ended up teaching. Absolutely hated school. I ended up teaching. You don't know what a great time I had teaching. And that's where I found some of my greatest odd successes. It was being a teacher. One young lady, I said to her in the middle of the semester, her first freshman year, you know, you did all right on your last test. But I want you to know, if you keep fiddling around with these boys the way you're doing right now, you're going to be pregnant. When she graduated, she came to me, she said, thank you for saying that. It made a difference. Another guy was from Africa. He stood tall. My God, he was tall. And suddenly disappeared. And then I saw him a year or so later. And I said, you're back in school again? Yes. He says, I came back because you said I had to have an education. And he was now a leader. So that's my take on education. Is I want you to think about, you can't do some of the things you're asking about up here because it takes money. And no state is going to keep pouring money into it because you can. It's not an endless coffer full of cash, in spite of what Senator Gordon might say. But there's nothing to say about that. But honestly, as far as I know, he keeps his hands in this perfect, so it's clear. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Next we have Tim Hannah John. Sorry.
Standing over here.
You're standing over there?
I don't know if I can do that. Just at the same
Okay,
time.
here, I'll be in that. Thank you.
Okay, hi, my name's Kim. I'm a longtime educator. Fairly recently moved to Connecticut. A lot of my experience is in Vermont. And a couple points that I want to make. First of all, there's nobody that I know, public school educators, legislators, family. I know 0 people who think that homeschooling shouldn't be a thing. So let's just start with that. So I don't like that we're characterizing that people want to take it away, because I don't think that's true. As a public school teacher, I think it's a great thing. Second, I would like to say, like, I heard about this forum and I thought, I think what precipitated us being here is some terrible, terrible violence being perpetuated against children, right? And so that's launched into this. We need to investigate, right? But I was very careful to say we should not be villainizing homeschool people based on these experiences, right? On these awful, awful situations that happened to families and children and communities, right? I don't love that there's a tone of villainizing public school that's happening here either. I'm pretty uncomfortable with that as a public school teacher. Okay. So I don't like that we're characterizing public school as a terrible place. I don't like that we're characterizing public school children as being unchallenged and incapable. We have a lovely example of a public school student here who is engaged in his local community and civic activity, clearly very bright and thriving. I could come in here with so many public school students that I know that would tell you all about how much they love their experience too, okay? So let's not forget about that. So this dichotomy that we're creating is false. I'm uncomfortable with that. I wanted to say that. Okay, here we go.
Okay, third, I also wanted to say, I think, so one of the things that I do when I'm interested in this topic is I throw a wide net and I start doing a lot of research, right? So I'm reading the report that you mentioned, Child Advocate Report. I'm doing a lot of research across the board. And you bring up a really important point about kids' perspective, right? So I happen to find a national organization that is made up of adult children of homeschoolers. And I would like to say that they're offering a different perspective than is being put forth here that I would like for you to consider. So that is called the Coalition for Responsible Education. It's an organization made up of former homeschool students. And they are actually pretty concerned sometimes about the safety of children in homeschool situations. And they're not casting aspersions. They're all pretty successful individuals, right? But they recognize that there's room for improvement, like there is in public education. As a public education teacher, I can tell you right now, there's a lot of room for improvement. Like you suggested in the beginning, you said something about striking the right balance, right? Which is really important. So as I'm doing some research, right, this organization has been doing a lot of research about homeschooling, about child abuse and neglect, about education. And so it's pretty interesting. So here's really the only thing I came to say without saying all that stuff too. Let's see. Okay. So in my experience as a educator, there have been many families that I have known who homeschool responsibly. I've seen and been a part of some very beautiful, creative, and quality education homeschool arrangements. And at the same time, abuse and neglect does occur in homeschool environments, and public school environments, and private school environments, okay? Right? There have been situations where abusive caregivers use homeschooling to conceal and escalate their abuse, right? There's some very well-known cases. That's kind of what triggered this. I've seen it happen, right? I've seen great things happen, and I've also seen some pretty terrible things happen. This particular organization is doing some research, right? They are suggesting that those incidences that you referenced and that we've talked about can be instructive. We should look at those situations and see what we can learn from them. They commented in their research, they found that since the year 2000, well over 100 homeschooled children have died from abuse that better policies could have helped prevent. Okay, let that sink in. Better policies could have helped to prevent. And they're not talking about policies about dictating what you're teaching your kids and how you're teaching it. That's got nothing to do with anything. That's a whole lot of how you homeschool your kids is how you homeschool your kids. That's your education. That's your choice. That's why you're doing it, right? So you can have the flexibility. So you can teach what you want, the way you want, in the time frame that you want. 100% you should do that. And some of these policies right here don't actually make sense if we're talking about abuse and neglect. That's true. I agree with that. Like I look at this and I go, how is this going to help anybody prevent child abuse? Okay. But there's one here about, it looks a lot to me like background checks. Okay. Well, that doesn't seem like a crazy thing. As a matter of fact, this agency said that there are only there's 47 states do not prevent caregivers convicted of crimes against children from homeschooling. Okay, so maybe we don't dictate your curriculum, but maybe we do a background check. So nobody's suggesting, I don't think, that we should be limiting parents' ability to homeschool. I don't think anybody is suggesting that
nobody's dictating that you have to send your kids back to public school. I think that's crazy, and I don't see anybody doing that. But I do think it's necessary and possible to create common sense protections for homeschool children in this state. And I think that's what we ought to do.
All right, we have to wrap this up because they have to close here. So we have a few people that are on the list that are not going to be able to speak, but there's a QR code in the back for you to register. But if we can get the last speaker on here for 5 minutes or less.
Thank you. In case you don't know me, I'm Diane Connors, founder and current co-president of Connecticut Homeschool Network. And I right off the bat want to say this. I raised 10 children. They are all adults. And some of them graduated in the top 10 of their class of Connecticut public schools. And I'm very proud of that. I'm not anti-homeschooling or anti-public schooling. And yes, that does exist on both sides. So let's just be honest about it. Of my children that are grown, some of them are continuing second generation homeschooling. They're very little right now, and I'm actively involved in that. And another misconception, I think we have to have a really strong foundation here, whatever we're talking about. And when we're dealing with misconceptions, that's a problem on either side, so to speak. And when it is stated that homeschoolers don't have any regulations or something like that, that is false. They have very heavy regulation, and here's why. Connecticut 10-184, duties of parents, 100% of the law puts the quote unquote burden, legal burden, upon the parents to instruct their child or cause them to be instructed. So that means if they're going to not homeschool them, they put them in public school. Or you go further down in the statute, it talks about equivalent instruction. Does not apply to homeschoolers. That is a misconception. That applies to the people who are not following duties of parents and homeschooling and not enrolling their children in public school. They're sending them to private school. That's what that's about. That's compulsory attendance. So we're talking about the compulsory education portion of the statute in the beginning, and then the compulsory attendance for those that are not following the exact duties of parents. So the other thing that was mentioned tonight that I want to address is the idea of tracking the children. And indeed, that is very much part of what is going on here. Attorney Stevenson, who could not be here tonight, delivered many FOIA requests on May 5th at the information session. And her and I have gone through over 2,000 pages of documents, and there's more coming. So some of the things that we found out in those documents with email communications, meetings, etc., included conversations about not abuse and neglect, but getting those homeschooled children their PSIS number in the state tracking system. So yes, those of you that are onto that, you're onto something. Okay, another thing here. In today's, I don't remember which news media released this article. 2/3 of Connecticut's children cannot read at grade level. That's concerning. Homeschoolers just do not have that issue. Did I just say they're perfect? No, I would never say that. I don't know any homeschooler that would say that. But when you're guided by passion for the quality of your child's upbringing, you're going to give it everything you've got, and you have thousands of resources that are available to you for academic success. I have gone through that with my children. I went to college all the way to the PhD level, along with homeschooling my children. And I learned along with them because I didn't start college until I was 28, and I'm not telling you how old I am now. Okay, so another important thing I wanted to address here. And the statistics on the parents teaching their kids, okay, less than 10% of parents that are homeschooling their children do not have a college degree at some level. Of those parents, studies have been done where it shows the difference between the children that are public schooled and the children that are homeschooled as it relates to academic level of the parents. And in all instances, the testing has shown the homeschoolers did better than the public school children on academic testing. So the level of education that the homeschool parents had was irrelevant. How the homeschool parents get their job done. They do their work depending on the age of the child. It could be an hour, usually in the morning, couple hours in the morning. When the kids are older, they're working more independently. They could work several hours a day. This is my, these numbers 7 out of 10. I do know her name. And she's never been to public school. She's doing very well in her career. And she is one of the ones that were having second generation homeschoolers. I know her because she's my daughter. She does not want me talking about her, but I will tell you that there is an area that she is an expert in, and she's been nationally, if not globally, published in that area. She's going to yell at me, so I'm not saying it anymore. I have, let's see. Yes, I'm trying. I'm almost done. I really am. And I have this document from Attorney Stevenson to pass out. I want to mention the Office of Child Advocate. She has stated this. She has stated that, let's put it on the table, 36% of homeschoolers have DCF connection. That is so misleading. It is so misleading. So Attorney Stevenson and I have worked with real professionals in their field of statistics. They have their PhDs. They are from 3 different universities. They have all looked at her work, and they don't even know each other, and they came up with the same conclusions. And it's a naughty word that I won't say. So I do want to, and she wants to, she's on vacation, speak to the legislators. We have some pretty strong statistics about the misrepresentation that was given in that report. 36% of homeschoolers out of over, 60 to 65,000 reports go into DCF every year in Connecticut. Approximately half of those are investigated. So say 33,000. The numbers that she came up with that even had a complaint. Now remember, these complaints could be mom and dad are going to PPT meetings with their public school child and it's not going well. They don't agree with how the child is being serviced. This goes on for a period of time and the parents come to us and they're like, this is what's happening in the PPT meetings. We can't take it anymore. We've got to be able to homeschool, but my child needs speech and language. Fine, use your insurance, get your own coverage, pick your own provider. You don't just have the one that's given to you. And long story short, they get prepared, they pull the child out, and the PPT team will say, we're going to report you to DCF. That's part of that 36%. They're being reported doesn't mean much. Being substantiated, well, you start to get into a little different area, but even that can have a complexity to it. And DCF, the DCF commissioner stated that at the May 5th info session, they can be complex. So stay tuned because we will be coming out with more information on that topic, and whatever happens the rest of this year or next year, we all have a responsibility to have our facts straight. And there is absolutely more to the story. I said on May 5th to the legislators when I had my turn to talk that they were being duped because I already had the beginning of the information that I'm talking about right now. And I am telling you now, after 2,000 pages of FOIA documents, you're absolutely being duped. We have much more information to share with you. It's quite serious. Thank you.
Thank you. So, to wrap up, we're a little bit over in that. I want to thank you guys all for coming out, and yes.
I'm thinking.
Well, thank you for that. We're going to be around if you want to talk, after we wrap up, but we got to start cleaning up the chairs and everything. And thank you guys all for coming. There's a QR code to register.